Well, good morning, everyone. Have you ever noticed that perception and reality are not always aligned? And when they're not, it is often wrong perception that triumphs over reality. Advertisers know this. They use this every day. It doesn't matter if the latest gadget or pill or service works. It matters if we think it does. We see the same dynamic in politics. Doesn't matter if the candidate is strong on crime or has a great economic plan or is going to build a more just society. It matters that we think they do. And we see this tension between perception and reality when we might say you only get one chance to make a first impression. Because in the first few minutes that we meet somebody new, we're already forming opinions about them, whether we realize it or not, and they are doing the same with us. And that was also true 2,000 years ago when people met Jesus for the first time. And in this gospel that we just heard, Jesus and Peter are discussing these differences between perception and reality, between first impressions and truth. And this discussion is framed by two questions. First, Jesus asks, "Who do people say that I am?" In other words, what's the perception? What is the first impression that people have had of me? And the answers reveal this difference between perception and reality, because so many people saw Jesus as just another in the line of the prophets, a great man and nothing more. And then comes the second question, the question of reality. And who do you say that I am? And Peter's answer is spot on. You are the Christ, the Son of the living God. But how does Peter know this? How does Peter see what so many others fail to see? Was Peter smarter than everyone else? Was he more perceptive? No, I don't think so. In fact, I think most of the evidence points to maybe the contrary conclusion. No, but Jesus tells us how Peter knows. Because it has been revealed by the Father. Peter has received the gift of faith. But that's not the end of the story. Well, it might be the end of the story for those who cling to that perception that Jesus is nothing more than a great man. But for Peter and for us and for all who have received the gift of faith, it cannot be the end. Because when we know who Jesus truly is, it requires a response. And Peter's response was to become the rock upon whom Christ builds his church, to proclaim that Jesus Christ is Lord, that he suffered, died, and rose again for the forgiveness of sins, that he continues to nourish his people with his own body and blood. And it is Christ himself who leads Peter to this response. But what about us? What is our answer to that question? Who do you say that I am? Well, if we buy into that perception that Jesus is a great man and nothing more, I guess we're off the hook. But if, like Peter, we see the reality that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God, then we too must respond. And Peter became the rock upon which the church was built. We also are called to be rocks, living stones that make up the structure of the church. And therefore, we are called, like Peter, to proclaim the good news that Jesus Christ is Lord, that he suffered, died, and rose again for the forgiveness of sins, and that he continues to nourish us with his body and blood. And like Peter, it is Christ himself who leads us to this response. And so this morning, as we gather as members of that holy church built upon the rock of St. Peter, as we listen to God's holy word, and as we are nourished by the precious body and blood of Christ Jesus, let us ask the Lord for the grace and the courage to respond as Peter did. And let us go forth from this place to joyfully proclaim through words and through deeds that Jesus is the Christ, the Son of the living God.